sponsors of Valley News Live, our parent company, or our advertisers.
Welcome back. With me right now from St. Paul, Minnesota State Representative Mr. Ben Lien. Ben, thanks for joining me. Obviously, some pretty good news coming out of Minnesota about the budget overall. We'll talk about that in a moment, but I want to start here. Part of Governor Dayton's budget plan is a 5.5% business-to-business services tax. In your opinion, do you think this is a good strategy to raise revenue for the state of Minnesota?
Well, it is a part of Governor Dayton's overall proposal, and I had the opportunity to sit down with some business leaders in Moorhead a couple weekends ago. I wanted to get a feeling from them what they thought about the governor's tax package as a whole, looking at the property tax reductions, the business-to-business taxes, of course, and their concerns overwhelmingly were on the business-to-business tax aspect of it. So, you know, it is a concern of mine. It's a concern of the district. And I think the most important thing to remember about all of this, though, is that this is the first word in the conversation, excuse me, that the legislature will have over the next couple months going into May throughout the session. So I think it's important to take a look at the whole package as a whole, you know, every aspect of the package. And like I say, I certainly have my concerns about that aspect of the governor's tax proposal. And, you know, I'll be working and fighting to see what we can do to take care of that, to alleviate those concerns in the district.
So kind of a yes or no answer, sir. Do you think this is a good strategy, this business-to-business tax? Is it a good strategy to raise revenue for Minnesota, yes or no? Well,
you know, Chris, I really can't box myself in and commit myself to any one aspect of the governor's proposal. You know, I just, right now, I feel we have to take a step back and look at this package as a whole, as every aspect and every element of it. With that being said, I've heard the concerns of the folks in the district, and those are my concerns, as it is, you know, the district and the people that voted for me. And those are the concerns I have been voicing, along with the clothing tax for the state. Those are the concerns I have been voicing in St. Paul.
So under any circumstances, would you sign off on a budget that included a business-to-business tax?
You know, Chris, as I said before, I really don't think it's effective for somebody who's a policymaker, who is a legislator, to make those pledges or make those commitments before we have the final package, the final bill, the final piece of legislation.
Ben, excuse me, I'm saying under any circumstances, would you sign off on a business-to-business tax? I understand there's going to be reiterations and all that stuff, but under any circumstances, would you say, hey, this is a good idea, I'm signing off on it?
Yeah, you know, Chris, I am not going to make any pledges. I don't feel that's an effective way to legislate before you know what you're making a decision on, before you know what you're legislating on.
All right, so I'm going to take that as a yes, that there are circumstances that you would. I want to have you explain something to me here, sir. This is from your governor, your chief executive of your state. This is from the Star Tribune earlier this week. I'm going to read this to you. Governor Mark Dayton said on Monday that he takes business tax concerns very seriously, but it would be unfair to drop his proposed sales tax increase on business services, but keep in his proposed sales tax increases on consumer services. This he said, and I quote, Ben, turns out that most business people who are advocating broadening the base, they want to tax consumers, but they do not want to pay taxes themselves. I just think that's unfair, but that's the reality. Your comments on that? This is your chief executive.
Yeah, he is the governor of the state of Minnesota, and you know that's how he feels. You know, those are the words that came out of his mouth. And again, my position is we need to take a look to see what the legislature puts together, what the package is coming out of the tax committee, because that's the piece of legislation that we will be voting on. That's the piece of legislation we'll be making decisions on.
So do you agree with what Governor Dayton said, Ben?
Well, as I said before, Chris, I don't feel it's effective for legislator or policymaker to be making pledges, to be making decisions on things before they're actually in front of them.
Mr. Lien, with all due respect, sir, I'm not asking to pledge anything, or then I'm asking, do you agree with what Governor Dayton is saying? Essentially, he's saying that corporations, and maybe I should ask it this way, do you think or believe that corporations pay taxes?
Well, corporations do pay taxes.
Well,
yeah.
not really, sir, because you and I both know they pass those expenses on to the consumer. And this is what I don't understand with Governor Dayton saying this. This was my point is here's a guy who says, I'm going to go out and fight for the low and middle income people, which I'm assuming you ran on the same platform. And here you are saying, hey, there's circumstances where I'm going to pass this business to business tax, which you and I both know the businesses are going to pass on to these low and middle income people. It's the most regressive taxes out there. And this is where I go, wait a second. It doesn't make any sense to me. Help me understand it.
Well, I guess I'm a little conflicted now because from what I was hearing earlier is that you would be against the business to business taxes. And now I'm hearing that you would be for them, or you support what the governor is saying?
I don't support it. What I'm saying is the governor here is basically stating, and I quote, the businesses don't want to pay taxes themselves. That's not fair. They don't pay the taxes. Everyone thinks they do, but you and I both know they pass those costs on to the consumers, thus being one of the most regressive taxes on the planet. So this doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm asking to help me understand how this business-to-business tax or these corporate taxes can be a good thing when you're out there fighting for the low to middle income people in your district.
Right. Well, and we have looked at ways to cut a lot of those tax loopholes for businesses so that they would be held more accountable to certain pieces of legislation that, if passed, would impact them.
Ben, last comment, anything inside information you give us? I know Governor Dayton's coming out with a new budget plan next week because of the revised numbers. Any inside baseball you might have for us?
No, I really haven't heard too much about that. The topic of conversation now, at least in the House and the legislature, is based on the February forecast. The committees are going to really start getting down into the nitty-gritty, looking at setting their budgets for their departments, for their agencies. And that's where the focus has been in the House, at least, is doing the committee work and getting the bills through committees before the policy deadline, and also taking a look at the budgets that each committee and each agency will be setting.
Ben, thanks so much for your time, your first session. I hope we can have you back on often and keep us tabs as to what's happening in St. Paul and how it's going to impact, obviously, the city of Moorhead and your district. Speaking about businesses, stay close, because when we come back, we've got the president of the Fargo-Moorhead West Fargo Chamber, Mr. Craig Whitney, who has now come out with a new business task force saying we must have permanent flood protection here in the Fargo-Moorhead area. Stay close. Lots more coming up here on 630 Point of View. And as always, please join our conversation. Go to our website, 630pov.com.